All right, I guess we'll get the show rolling here. Thanks everybody for coming out tonight. This is our committee meetings for the month of February, for the month of February. This is really an unofficial board meeting in that we don't keep minutes and anything along that line. Typically, we do not have a section for public comment, although Dr. Schenk had said she had a couple of folks that said they wanted to speak tonight. So again, we're going to kind of step outside the box a little bit and we'll do public comment this evening as well. In doing that, we'll keep it to the typical the general rules we have, which is it's limited to 30 minutes, 5 minutes per person. We only have, looks like I only have 2 people want to speak, so that shouldn't be a problem tonight. Although I do, a couple of board members said they wanted to make some statements too. So I'm going to actually ask the board members who want to speak to actually say their piece first, and then we'll turn it over to, I'll read off and answer public comment. So, Ms. Perry.
I just want to say that the opinions that were expressed by certain board members on January 10th do not reflect my opinions. And I am very sorry that I didn't express that night. Thank you.
I would like to say that I agree with Ms. Harry, and again, my apologies.
And I would like to say I agree with Mrs. Zackin and Mrs. Perry, and I have always stood for every individual, and I will continue to stand for every individual student, no matter who they are. And when they come through this front door, we are here to protect and serve. And I'll say that too.
And I agree with my colleagues who have spoken already. The one evening when many of the comments were made, I was not at this meeting. As chair of the Joint Operating Committee of the Career Technology Center, I had to be at that meeting to conduct interviews, but certainly I agree with the comments made by my colleagues this evening.
Well, first of all, I'm not going to apologize for asking questions. Totally different.
Hey, come on. Don't need that tonight.
Same here.
It's just all it is.
We are here to ask the questions. We are here to question whether or not the policies and what legal ramifications come with that.
There was a case in Virginia, in Loudoun County, Virginia, where there was this predatory boy, and the school district down there had things in place for, bathroom use for anybody, the way it seems to me, as I understood it. And it was a predatory heterosexual boy, went into put a skirt on one day and said, "You can't touch me." And he had his way, and it's not happening.
And it's
I'm
happened
here
twice,
for every
not
child.
just once, twice.
I'm here for every child.
And I do
I'm not willing to throw my kids to the wolves. Okay, that was my point. The way these meetings go, there's one word. Okay, well, I have questions, or there's a policy, we have questions. I don't get to express my backstory or my context. Okay, that's all I was doing, was asking questions, and I'm not going to apologize for it, period. That's all I have to say.
I'm very concerned that solicitor is not present here to actually get clarification for us board members.
Mrs. Piper, you've been coming to school board meetings for well over a year now, and there has never been a solicitor at these committee meetings. The
I
fact that that's a
understand, but
surprise
it's
to you is
very
surprising to
important.
me.
It's very
But
important.
it's just our committee meetings. Any questions you have from him will come up on Wednesday night when he is here sitting in this chair in his official capacity. These are just our committee meetings this evening.
So committee meetings, we deliberate, we actually
Right.
find the questions, we find the answers. This is what we come up whether or not the policy should pass or should not pass.
Correct.
That's very important. The solicitor, in my opinion, should be present at those meetings. So we could properly address our concerns and questions and have a legal background, somebody with a legal background to properly guide us through this.
Well, any of those questions that come up this evening, we'll have to wait till Wednesday to get a legal background.
And keep in mind, these policies have already been vetted through all the legal counsels at PSBA. They have been vetted through our legal counsel. So they've been vetted twice through the state legal counsel through PSBA, which is why all the code citations are on them. And they are vetted through our legal counsel as well. So before they even come to you, just as they are through BCTC, just as they are through BCIU, and just as they are through the other 500 public school districts in Pennsylvania.
So when I asked the question to PSBA, they said that each policy is geared towards a specific school district. How does that happen?
It
Do you
happens-
have the input? Do you deliberate with them?
They write.
Modify them?
They write the generic policies. All I do is take the policy and then I bring it forth to the board. If the board chooses to make any specific modification based on the culture of the Oley Valley School District, then that is what the board deliberates through these meetings through the policy committee. It sits for 30 days to allow for the public to have its input. And then after that, it is approved by the board and becomes an official policy for the Oley Valley School District.
So and those deliberations take place on Monday. Usually.
They have 30 days. It goes for first reading, it is deliberated then for second reading, and then it is approved officially by the board.
And we don't have a legal advice present here during those deliberations. And that's my point.
You have it on the second reading, which is done at the board meeting. Just as you asked Mr. Attorney Mancuso questions at the last board meeting in which he responded to your questions. And you will be at the meeting on Wednesday when they're up for official first reading, and you can ask them your questions then, just as you can ask the questions this evening as well.
But it's not during deliberation again, so this
But you could
is
deliberate them again on Wednesday night as well.
when we take a vote.
Mr. Jackson, we kind of skipped past you. If you have something, if you want to say something or not, so you're not obligated. I'm just throwing it
Yeah,
out.
no, and I just want to say to the community that when you look at the board, everybody has an individual opinion, and I don't think, just like we don't look at children as a group or teachers as a group, you need to look at each board member individually and not group us together as one.
And that includes the administration as well.
And
Everybody's their own person.
Dr. Paul, I would like to add that as a community member, as a parent myself, I would not want to have that horrid crime committed on my watch. I do not want to be a part of that. To have a child.
Oh, none of us want to be part of that. I mean, you make it sound like it's
But
going to
that's
happen.
what, but that's where do you draw the line of, and where do you do the protection? How do you
protection?
protect the
I mean-
other kids? How do you protect the girls from, a biological male going into the bathroom?
Well, let's
we do- we
let's back
But
up.
we do
First-
not allow and have not allowed that, our bathroom use. We do not allow that. We have single sex or single use bathrooms in the school district. And we have for the last 12 years that I've been here, and I could probably speak for Dr. Zachin as well, that is not permitted and has not been permitted in this district. And if the students who have tried that over the years have been disciplined for going into the wrong bathroom.
Okay. and
So
what
that has
about-
not been allowed, and
what
that has
about
gone to the
activities?
board, it has been through the board. I don't know why that's becoming an issue, because the boards of the past, and I'm thinking back to Mr. Heckman, when you were president, and Mr. Burns was president, and Mr. Pollack was president, that has been decided by the boards of the past, and I would assume that the boards of the present was an agreement that in this school district, that is not permitted.
Locker rooms?
And same thing, locker rooms are the same way.
And those were my questions.
That
That
was-
was
we have
exactly my
They
question.
were questions.
Correct.
But, you know, the
That
one
was
issue,
exactly
the
my
one
question.
problem I have, the one issue I take is you were never told you couldn't ask questions. Matter of fact, I have emails I sent to both of you, encourage you to ask questions when you have them. I also cautioned you, you might not like the answers. And that's the problem you have, Mrs. Piper. If you don't like the answer, you keep hammering away. And I don't know how to answer you any better than to give you the answer that's the answer.
But that question was not asked.
No, I did specifically ask
Yeah,
the question.
well,
I actually did.
he explained it. One of the questions either her or I asked, and he explained it. We already
Right.
had that. And that was the answer to the question.
You
Right.
you asked the question, who
It
makes the
wasn't a
decision?
specific question. I probably did.
You asked the question,
Probably.
who makes the decision, that
Yeah, and
decision,
then
and
he
I
said we
explained that
have-
the board makes the decision.
And then he explained it,
Correct,
and then I was satisfied.
correct, and then
But
and that
was
has
the
been
question.
asked.
But in asking a question, it turns into a.
Well, depending on the
Sir,
question, it can
right.
get animated. I mean, there's no
And
denying
I'm
that.
not going to apologize for asking
I
questions.
don't want you to apologize.
No.
Listen, I want you to ask all the questions you have. Again, I just caution you might not like the answers. That's all I say.
And how do we protect
understand.
women in girls' sports?
You bring up an issue that's not an issue. That's the part. I just don't understand it.
But it
You're tilting at
And
windmills
if
here.
and when that were to
And it
happen,
was.
that would be a board decision if and when that were happen, whether that be in the future, it would come up, that would be a board decision. I can tell you that the stance of the school district to this point, and it has not happened, is that we follow the national regulations, which means that that child would have to have gone through all of the hormone treatments, and there's a whole list of what that needs to look like. They would have to have gone through all the biological changes, and they would have to be signed off on a national level according to the physician's rules, but they still would have to be approved by this board in order to play that sport. So the board, the 9 people that would be sitting around this table, if and when that would ever transpire. But also you have to remember that only 3% of the national students who are transgender ever are athletes. There's only been one major case in the state of Connecticut who actually was a transgender student who was a phenomenal athlete, because most transgender students are not athletes. But if and when that were ever to happen in the Oley Valley School District, that decision will be made by this board at that time when it occurs. So you're talking about an issue that has not happened, that will be made by the 9 people that sit around this table at the time in which that happens to happen. It's not going to happen without the board making a decision at that time. That is not a management decision. That is a policy decision made by the people who control policy, which is the 9 people who sit around the table. That's not a superintendent decision. That's not a principal decision. That's not an athletic decision. That's not a coach's decision. There is procedures, but at the end of the day, the board makes that decision. So the community will elect the 9 people, whether that's a year from now, 2 years from now, 20 years from now, never. Those people will make the decision if and when that happens. And if you say no, I can tell you you'll get sued. If you say yes, I can tell you you're going to get sued. And then the courts will ultimately make the decision. But the board will make that decision if and when the time comes that you will have to make that decision.
And I understand right now there is a wrestling debate about this, transgender in Chester County.
There probably is, and that's a Chester County
That's
decision.
right.
Correct, but you also
why
said that
discuss
our
that here?
sports supervised by PIAA.
PIAA does not have a stance on transgender.
Well, I'm not sure what it means.
PIAA does not take a stance, yes or no, against transgender. That is a local decision. PIAA says the district in which that is occurring in Chester County, they will make the decision regarding whether that child plays or doesn't play on that team's sports. PIAA could care less.
Okay, then as a board, can we somehow notify players and the parents if we are to play the
No.
team that may have,
It resorts back to the home district's decision.
I'm sorry,
No, I know you're
So
not.
you want us to be warned if there's a transgender student on another
on
team?
the other team, and
No.
parents have a determination whether or not they want their child to play
No.
against that team with a transgender player on it.
Nope, you cannot. If the home district makes the decision, you cannot tell another district you will not play against them. That is the home district.
No, I'm not saying the district, I'm saying a parent individually for,
You can tell your child that you're not going to let them play against that student and not let them compete. As a parent, you just don't let them go to the game.
but how would the parents know? Who
When
would
you show up at-
notify
Well, how are
them?
we supposed to know?
If we play.
That's what I'm trying to get
What I'm
to.
telling
So,
you,
you know,
if you're
what is the
playing,
chain of command and how can parents
You-
be empowered?
You want
in their
you want
decision?
schools to somehow report to some authority that they have transgender students on their sports teams. That's what you're asking.
no, we
I
are.
mean, that's what she's asking. I want to make
No,
sure that's understand.
I'm asking the question. So you said, well, it's a local board decision, right?
Right, but that's,
So what about our parents that are here that actually would not want to expose their child?
They don't have to expose their
you
child.
have no right to that information. That's it. Basically, you, as a parent, you would have no right to that information from that other school. That's that
That's
child's
the answer.
responsibility. The same way if that child was diabetic, that child had leukemia, that child had cancer, that child's transgender, that child was, has different sexual orientations, that's that child's parent's responsibility, that you would not have right to that information.
So the only way, let me understand it. So the only way the parent can protect that child, their own child from being in the game is actually being at the game and pull them away at the time of the game.
Pretty much.
Okay. Thank you.
Dr. Fackett, we've been going on room. Anybody who just wants to make a statement?
I came in 3 minutes
That's right.
late and I was like, whoa, what happened?
No, I
here?
apologize. We're going to open up to public comment, but I
No,
thought I loved. board-
Honestly, I think there's a lot of questions we don't have as being board members. So, I mean, I agree with Aaron in that. I just think, I think there's a responsibility to keep an eye on the news cycle as far as what's going on in our country, because things do gradually creep in. Okay, so that's why I think we're trying to be diligent in that. You know, we saw what happened with that Virginia and with the bathroom situation down there, and that's obviously a concern. And I think our constituents would be concerned if that were the case here. So I think we're trying to learn the board as far as what are what answers we can get, what powers we have as far as you know, as far as the policies given to us. So I really do believe it's a learning curve for us. But I do think it's our responsibility to ask those questions. Just because I do think we've seen a drastic change in our country. Man, I'll tell you what, the last 2 years has been just insane. So there's a lot of concerns I have as far as things changing and creeping slowly into school districts. And I think if we're just being given things handed down and not looking at these policies and really combing through them and making sure we have the answers or understanding the policies. And I don't fully understand all these policies, but there's a lot to read through. So I think that's why we have some concerns. That's all I really have to say about that, but it's just, I think we're just doing our part to ask questions and try to understand our part and what we can do about policies, if we can even change them. Am I rambling?
No, that's
No,
right. No more than anybody else.
And I think
So-
that part of the, Dr. Fagan, and your questions, at least in the conversations we've had, has been valid in the fact that the biggest piece is understanding the law.
Yeah.
And the school code drives 90% of what we do. And yes, there's a lot of the school code that I think is obsolete, and it's 1949, and that we should not have to follow it. And there's class 1, 2, and 3 school districts. And it's still built on a 1949 agricultural community. And the Oley Valley School District is not an old school, what we kind of joke in the FFA world, and I think Mr. Keller heard it. We're not cows and plows. We are a high-tech agricultural community, and our farming community is scientists, and they're bachelor's degrees people in order to run those million-dollar farms. And the fact that we don't have to like it, but we have to follow it, and that I am in my position, a commissioned officer by the Department of Education, and I have a government, and this is a governmental board. And I don't necessarily like a lot of things that are handed down, but we have to follow them, and we have to follow the laws. And the policies themselves are based on the laws and the regulations and the case laws. And a lot of that is driven by that. And as you said, a lot of it changes because of the case laws. And understanding the difference between management and policy, and policy is really the law in which the school districts have to live by. And a lot of it we don't necessarily have to like, but we don't really have a choice in it. And things that really drive our culture are the things that the board has control over, because that is the policy. But things like the standards, the curriculum, the testing, all of that stuff, we don't have any control over. And I think I've said that, in a previous meeting, that 90% of what we do every day is we don't have control over, because they tell us the what. We only control the how, basically, and what we do kind of every day. And then what we, in that kind of piece of how we deliver our instruction. But I welcome the questions. A lot of our, what I do every day, and I've lived this for 33 years. And sometimes I'm trying to, even with, some of the statements that Mrs. Piper makes, I struggle sometimes to hear the question, because I hear the statement and not the question. So sometimes my frustration, and I apologize for that, is trying to figure out where was the question in the statement. So, and I respect the fact that you have the questions, and I like to explain what we do, because it helps you to understand where we need to go and what we need to be. So, when you have a question, if I'm not clarifying, just keep asking, and I will give it to you. But you may not like what I have to say, because we do come at it differently. I mean, the foundation of public education in the United States is not like Asia. It is not like Europe. I mean, I studied the European system at Oxford University in England. I mean, I spent a considerable amount of time over there. And if we had that philosophy and that model, the United States system would be in the mess that it's in. It's just a totally different system. And I'm not familiar with the Russian system that you grew up in, but it's a different base, and we educate all students. And then it's almost like in the United States, the educational system is based more on the extracurriculars than it is on the foundation of academics. Or if you're familiar with the Asian system and the European system, it's all about academics and achievement. So it's a very different from the foundations of American education. When we're looking at Dr. Martley in our basic education courses, it's a whole different philosophy. So it is hard to get your head around, especially if you haven't grown up in it like we did. So please keep asking questions, because that's the only way you're really going to get your handle on everything that encompasses running of the operation of a school district.
And athletic line. You're talking to the person that was president of the BCIAA for 9 years and a member of that group for almost 20 as an athletic director, as a football coach. If you need anything, any questions answered, I always lean on the professional who's being paid the big bucks. That's Dr. Shane. But that's my cup of tea. I went to the PIAA meetings. I sat there and challenged the PIAA, all of them, and lost.
You lost.
And I mean, we challenged them strongly. But that is a different group of individuals. And I understand, I hear what you're saying, because I've been down that road where a situation where a team came here and had a male athlete on a girls' team. Okay, I've been down that road. And as a matter of fact, I spoke to that girls' team, our team. And to a girl, they all said, we want to go out and make sure we take care of the issue. Guys, I said, it's up to you guys. And they certainly did go out and play. And the reason for that, that individual did not have a chance on that other team to play field hockey. And that school district decided they would allow it. But that school district told the other school districts that this is what's taking place. And then you could make your decision. Some school districts don't do that, but that district did.
You don't have to.
You don't have to.
And I'm coming from the time when women were looked down in sports altogether. In the sport I was in, your best chance is going to be someone's groom. And if you actually want to compete, and they didn't hide it, slip your way to the top. They would come out and they just tell you straight in your face. And the roommate next door committed suicide jumping out the window because her coach got her pregnant. So I had to witness all of this with my friends, live through that with the little kids that I supervised. They were 13 and 14-year-olds. And those adults had absolutely nothing to shame, and nobody held them accountable. And so women, where I come from, fought very hard to participate in those sports. And this is why I was asking the questions, at what point can we, even as a parent, like, when can you find out about this? When can you step in? When you can say, you know what, I'm not going to let you play this. So, and apparently the answer is not until the game is over.
Not until game day or you find out.
Yeah.
And then you have to make a decision.
Okay, so we'll open up the public comment now. I've got a couple cards here and I see Mrs. Ritu, get your hand raised. I'll get you in when the folks here are done. First one I have is Mary Young. Mrs. Young, you just come up to the podium. Can you just tell us your address or what township you live?
Sure. My name is Mary Young. I live in Alsace Township. You need my full address?
No, it's fine.
Okay. So I'm a parent. I have a first grader and a pre-K. I moved here about 2 years ago. I remember researching the school and wanting to make sure, of course, like every parent, that it's a good school. And I was really excited about Alsace Township and feeling like I had made a good choice. When I met the family that lived in the home prior to me, it was a wonderful family. I still keep in great touch with them, but they had teenage daughters. And I remember asking her, you know, how'd she like Alsace, or how'd she like Oley Valley? And she said, academically, it's a great school. She said, but the culture there is so bigoted. There's so much racism. She says, I felt uncomfortable all the time. There was tons of bullying. She says, it's not a conducive, safe environment. She's like, I hated it. And I remember being so struck by that because, of course, at this point, I've already purchased the home and I'm like, crap, what am I going to do? It hurt. It hurt to think that I'm going to be sending my young children for the next 12 years into this school. So I just kind of stored it in my memory. And then this past summertime, when I was thinking about, okay, you know, here we go, getting ready for school, I want to start paying attention to the school board. I started watching the Zoom meetings and paying attention to how you guys handle things. I was really disappointed in the lack of taking COVID seriously. It felt as it was pretty dismissed. There were meetings that it would only be a minute or two, that it was discussed at the very end. In the process of watching that, I remember a young girl coming in tearful because it was such an unsafe environment and the amount of racism that she had faced was awful. Now, I watched you guys, not her, in response to that, and I was so struck by the blank faces. There wasn't a single adult on this board that met that child with empathy, that acknowledged her experiences. And at the very end of the meeting, I don't know who you guys are by name other than quick few of them now, but somebody said, you know, at some point we're going to have to deal with what this child's bringing to us. That was the only statement that was made, and I never heard anything again. So now in my short period of time with the school board, I've seen multiple students come in and say that this is not a safe environment, that I don't feel comfortable learning here, that there's bullying, that there's hatred, that there's discrimination. And yet this past month, in this last meeting, it's been confirmed again that we're creating an unsafe environment for our children. Why is that acceptable to the adults in this room? Why is that number one priority not happening? I hope to heck that you fight just as much for those transgendered students as you do for the fearful young girls who are so scared, because those transgender students are your students too, just like every little girl in this room. So you have an obligation to make it safe for everybody, because here's the deal. It's not just the transgendered students that are picking that up. When I purchased the home, it was a white, straight Christian family with a big American flag in their yard. And yet she felt unsafe. She felt unsafe because she watched what her peers went through. You're cultivating an environment where nobody feels safe, not just transgendered students, not just Black little girls who come and tell you what's happening for them. That is your priority, not Fox News, not the politics of the day. And I draw that direct link because what happened on Fox News showed up again with COVID. It showed up in relation to CRTs. It showed up in response to questioning transgender validity, all the way down to questions about furries. Literally, it was a story on Fox News about students pretending to be cats, and are we going to validate that since we're validating transgender rights? And a week later, it's in my school board. Why is that a direct link? That's unacceptable. Now, Maria, when I first met you, and I appreciated meeting you at that election poll one day, when we voted last November, you stood right outside of the poll, right at the door, which is illegal, obviously. But I was really appreciative because you told me that you were running for office because you were worried about the amount of politics that were on the board. And yet you bring politics in here rather than listening to the children's voices who are telling us that they're hurting and that they're not safe. We have an obligation to show up and protect our children and make this a safe environment. Not increase mental health, increase depression, increase suicidal ideation and gestures, which is what you're doing. So I beg you to slow down and pay attention to the real issues that our children have versus the ones that are fake on Fox News and that you're bringing into our school board for no reason. At this time, it's a non-issue here, and yet you've made it an issue for no good reason. Mr. Aaron, I don't know you very well, but you questioned the ability to hire staff who are transgendered, and I hope to heck that when you guys hire, that you're not thinking about what somebody's genitals or their private parts are, but rather what's on their resume. Because I sure as heck want to know when I'm hiring as a business owner, I'm looking at resumes of education, you got it, of education, of their experience, not what's inside their pants. Please work to make our children safe rather than being preoccupied with people's genitals. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Monahan?
No, not yet.
No,
We're going to go through like we usually do this.
Dr.
So,
Pollock,
the
is there?
second name I have is,
Clarify anything?
no. You had your chance to speak a few minutes ago.
You addressed 2 more members by name.
Yeah, I thought you weren't supposed to do that.
We're kind of playing outside the rules right now as it is, aren't we? Mr. Trimber?
But if I did that, it would.
Probably. Mr. Trimber? Mr. Trimber, can you please?
Why are we hypocritical here? I mean, seriously.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't keep it quiet, I'm just going to end the public comment completely. I'm trying to be open here, okay? Give everybody a chance. Please,
But just be fair,
Mr. Trimber.
that's all.
Ed Trimber, Pike Township. Just had 2 daughters graduate from here. And I just wanted to make a couple things clear. One, the young lady just spoke. My daughters went through school here, with the exception of the middle school. And I've seen things floating around on social media. Apparently, there's a petition that's being drummed up saying how the Oley School Board and the Oley School District didn't ready our kids for a multicultural, diverse experience when they leave here. I want to say 2 things. One, that couldn't be further from the truth for 2 reasons. One, it's not your job to do that. Your job is to teach the basics, teach about culture, teach about all these things. But when it comes to the nuts and bolts of whether your kid is ready for that experience, that comes down to me as a parent. That comes to me is to teach my kids the difference between wrong and right, to respect everybody. And I got a daughter that's in North Carolina on a scholarship for throwing. She's on a track and field team that is very multicultural. It's probably 50% African-American. She has a lot of students that are from all over the world, and she couldn't be happier. She's got gay friends. She's got a ton of colored friends. She's got a friend from Egypt. She's not had no problems. And I hear a lot of people say, oh, your kid leaves, they're going to have all these issues because Oley's racist. You're seeing stuff show up on the social medias, on the news. Couldn't be further from the truth. And I think part of the problem is parents are relying too much on the schools to teach their kid the morals. You're going to fail every time if you allow that school to do that, because as Dr. Shank said earlier, our morals for what the school teaches is coming from the top down. And I don't care what side of the ladder you're on right now, both sides are ugly and both sides aren't doing what's right for our kids. That being said, I'm glad for when we have a school board that's got flipped a little bit. I'm glad we have two voices now, because for a long time, I feel like we've only had one voice. And I think a lot of yous, if not all of yous, for the most part, have what's right for our kids in mind. I truly believe that. And that's why I voted for 3 of these people. I ran for 3 of these people, and that's what flipped the board. And I'm glad we have a voice now on both sides. And some of you don't like the spirited debate, but you should, because that's what makes this country better. When there's only one side, and I don't care what side it is, when there's only one side, the other side gets left out. If we're going to talk about safety and things for all our kids, and I truly believe the people that I voted for that won this last election do have the best in mind for all of our kids, because I've not seen it done differently. And I've talked with a lot of them off the cuff, off the side, and I've not heard garbage come out of their mouths. I can honestly say that. And I would tell you what, and some of you that know me, I would call you out if I did, and I didn't see that. So I'm glad we have both sides. I am a little disappointed that it took some of you a week and maybe 2 newspaper articles to want to stand up and separate yourselves. If you saw something that was ugly that night, you should have said it that night, not a week later. The Reading Eagle has a way of pulling things in, and let's face it. You want to talk about Fox, you want to talk about CNN, let's talk about all of them. These companies are in the business to make money and to create fires, because that's the only way to get readers. And the sooner we as people say enough's enough, I'm not paying attention. I got rid of my TV a year ago. It's the best thing I ever did. I read, I don't get as angry. I don't want to throw stuff at my television anymore. And I make my own decisions, okay? Couple other things I wanted to point out. Dr. Shank during the last school board meeting had made a comment about how a lot of board members get elected, they come here and they think they're going to change things. And I'm going to bump back on that a little bit, because the very fact that we're talking tonight, that people are watching and people's ears are up. There's some people here tonight that haven't been here before. It may not change by you guys at the school board, but the conversations that are happening, I think will make a change. I think this is where it starts. So I'm happy that I feel like we're part of the election process. I'm happy that I feel like our voices can be heard, and maybe you guys as a board can't change it, but if enough people get ticked off and go to the outside, like our representatives, our senators, and our congressmen, but it starts here. It really does, because these issues don't get discussed there. It isn't until we have a school board and the paper comes and people are throwing stuff at each other that everybody pays attention. And that's sad, but that's where we're at. When Title IX came out, it was made so that women could have equal opportunity in sports. Correct me if I'm wrong in that. Am I correct in that when it came out in like 72? It was basically because women were underrepresented.
This part of it.
Okay, but it changed when Obama, with the stroke of the pen, executive ordered transgender and all that other kind of stuff. And I have a problem with that for the simple fact that the group we didn't get the vote on it. But what I'm getting at real quick, just let me finish real quick.
Please.
When they came out with the bathroom rule, and Dr. Shank, you could probably back me up on this. I was probably one of the first calls that said, yo, what's going on with the bathroom policy now that it's changed?
Oh, yeah, you did.
And when she said, hey, we're going to one bathroom, I felt okay with that. I'm good with that. I don't agree with that lifestyle at all, but the fact that they did what they did, I was good with that. Now back to the sports. If you're not paying attention to what's going on, this erosion of what's happening in the girls' sports is ugly, dude. And it's getting everywhere. It's happening in Berks Catholic with wrestling. It's happening in track and field all over the country. Our girls that, I'm sorry, are never going to be able to compete against guys on a basic level because of the physicality, are going to lose scholarships. They're going to lose money. They're going to lose titles. And it's all because of a stroke of a pen.
Thank you, Mr. Trimber. This is Pastor House, Donna House. Is she online? I don't think she's here this evening.
Be here Wednesday.
Okay. And then I have Mrs. Ratu online. Can you open her up?
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yep, we got you.
Okay. Thanks for taking my comment. I hadn't really planned on speaking tonight, but I just kind of wanted to return to some of the comments that were made earlier. I appreciate that the board is identifying the need to ask questions I just wanted to briefly talk about the language that's being used, particularly the emphasis on protecting our cisgender heterosexual students. I heard this word a couple times tonight, and the reason it strikes me is because it seems like it's a pretty loaded word and really rooted in false assumptions. So our transgender and or homosexual students are actually far more likely to need protection and be the victim of hate crimes, aggression, bullying within our schools and outside of the schools. So some of the events that I heard mentioned tonight, the perpetrators in those events were actually cisgender heterosexual individuals, usually males. So what I'm hearing is really a fear of male cisgender heterosexual students. But we keep saying this, we have this need to protect our straight cisgender students. And I'm not understanding why there's just such an emphasis on doing that. And so I'm hoping that maybe you guys will take some of the offers that I hope are coming with diversity training, because I think that language certainly matters, but so does an accurate understanding behind the statistics of mental health, crime, educational opportunities for our LGBTQIA+ students. So I guess that's my question for the board tonight, is if you will accept diversity training and if you'll kind of integrate some of that to evolve your language and labels.
Is that, are you done?
Yeah, that was it.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Ratu. Anybody else? Okay, let's move into the actual committee meeting. So again, the way we run this, it's each chair of the committee runs their section. Usually end up going back to Dr. Shank to run it. We'll discuss it here on the board. If anybody in the audience then has questions afterwards, the chair for that committee can pass it over to questions from the audience. So,
Thank you, Mr. President. Dr. Shank, would you start with budget and finance, please?
You want me to do it, or you want?
Go ahead. Whoever.
We ask the board to review the BCIU proposed mandate service budget for 2022-23 in the amount of $1,943,946. For Oley Valley projected cost for 22-23 will be $26,766, and there is no increase compared to this year.
Thank you, Ming. Any questions from the board on the number one? Two?
Okay, number two is BCTC proposed budget for 2022-23, and for the district member share will be 734,866, and compared to current year will be 2.9% increase. In the dollar amount, $20,705 increase. For the district special needs share, there will be 69,933 projected cost. Compared to current year, we increased $8,965, about a 14.7% increase. And this will be including transportation costs.
Right.
Mr. Heckman will have more information.
Yeah. You want to explain
I'm
something?
very involved in that, obviously. Yeah, the budget as prepared by the Current Technology Center does still include transportation for all the students coming into BCTC. Initially, there was a thought that was going to be passed on to the districts, the home districts. A number of us felt that that was not a good plan, and there is now a plan to put a committee together to study the transportation issue for the future. But for now, every student, some obviously come in their own vehicles, but any bus and the like will be done by the Current Technology Center. And for the new board members, just so you know how some of this works, we look at what's the proportional share by each district, that is, how many students do we have? And for Oley Valley, we're averaging about 73.3 students with our 3-year moving average. That's equivalent to 5.18% of the budget. So it's a simple mathematical calculation. That's how we end up with our share. And you're right, we're about $21,000 increase from last year. The other thing we are including money in the budget for this year is also capital expenditures. We are looking at our chillers and our roofs for the next 2 or 3 years out. So we have some money in the budget looking at CapEx projects for that. But again, with the Career and Technology Center board will vote on this at our meeting in February. Then this will be rolled out to every district for voting in March and April timeframe. Then we bring it all back together in May. So if anybody has any questions, I have all the information. I can certainly help, or certainly our business office may have that information. But again, it's on average, average district increase is 2.8%.
And the second, the special needs is more transportation than anything.
No, that's special needs students. That special program we have for students that are in unique service type programs at Career and Technology Center.
Is that for paraprofessional help, or what is that for? Because it's 15%, $9 grand. I mean, is it for part-time nurses? Is it for, what is it for?
It's based on the number of students.
We have a higher number of students.
We have a much higher number of students coming in.
And that's why the number's up.
Right.
Thank you. Yep. Anything else for budget and finance from the committee? I'd just like to say our committee and our board, when we lost Mr. Richard, he was a numbers guy. And I'm not a numbers guy. I'm a social studies teacher who is a football coach. But I will tell you this much. I'm also an antique dealer. And I try and get the best price for everything. That's my goal. And I don't like at this point to raise any kind of numbers. So I'll be questioning those numbers because I'm a taxpayer. And every year it seems like my taxes have gone up. So I'm going to do everything I can with my committee to try and watch those numbers, because I just don't want to bring them up. I know I want to keep us safe, but I'll be asking questions to make sure that our numbers are and our dollars are spent wisely. Okay. That's all for budget and finance.
Any questions from the audience on budget finance? Personnel, Mr. Heck.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Pollock. We have 11 items. The first 9 are for action next week. Again, Dr. Shank, could you run us through the Cliff version of these, please?
Sure. Number 1 is a motion that we're asking to ratify the addendum to the regular June 28th agreement with School Operations Services, who does our paraprofessionals, cafeteria, and our custodians. We had to add the position of regular full-time lead custodian to that. The bill rate is listed. That was the first lead custodian that we had. So that was an addition for that. Number 2 is the resignation of Sonia Drucker, long-term, spelling error, substitute high school special education teacher who resigned after the board meeting in January. And then the next 2, 3, and 4, those 2 ladies are middle school secretaries. They just wish to switch places. So Elizabeth Byers, who was hired at 260, bless you, who wants to go to 220, and then Lauren Deeroff, who was 220, wants to go to 260. So they're just switching places. And then number 5, Ashlyn Luft, high school art teacher, is requesting an FMLA leave from May 1st to June 9th. Then number 6 is Manny Savignano, request for intermittent FMLA leave through January ratification, January 18th through and including June 10th. Motion number 10 is to appoint William Harrison, who is a high school assistant principal, as the district safety and security coordinator for the remainder of the 21-20 school year in accordance with Act 44, which is the safety act that we have to follow from the state. And number 8 is a day-to-day substitute teacher, Riley Durr, who's certified in special education, pre-K 8 and pre-K 4. And number 9 is Tim Rhodes, our athletic director, to attend the Pennsylvania Athletic Directors State Conference in Hershey from March 6th to the 18th. He is also the Berks County delegate. As the president of the Berks County Athletics Directors Association, Cost is $771.34. I did miss a 7 on my typing after I made the copies and didn't want to waste paper. And then number 10 was requested to put on discussion this evening for the position of Director of Human Resources and Public Relations for potential for the 22-23 school year. The budgetary impact for that position would be approximately $4,000. I did include at your place this evening a task list for that position for the board members. I did it in hard copy for you just because it's a lot to look at. I know Mr. Heckman had requested us had his personnel for discussion on that. A lot of the things that are listed, some of it on the list, we do not do at all, which needs to be done by the district. Many of these items I personally do as part of my position. Some of them are spread out throughout the district in multiple places, which is not good for internal control. Some of them are currently done by the executive assistant to the superintendent position. And then some of them we don't, like our exit and entry onboarding procedures are not as strong as we would like them to be. And then from a standpoint and then our state reporting. So there is a task list, which would then eventually, if you decide to do it, be turned into an official job description. It does not include the PR component yet, which I know Mrs. Zachin has brought up, and that would be also included on this as far as public relations, maintaining the website, which is I know is an issue. Mrs. Piper has brought up about keeping that up to date and more user-friendly, especially the board section of that. So I will turn it over to Mr. Heckman.
Well, quite frankly, this is something we've talked about for years, the need for an HR position within the district. It is a complicated issue that every day gets more and more complicated from the state level, the federal level, everything else. I think the district is at risk from a compliance standpoint if we're not following, again, all those policies and procedures, again, some federal, some state and alike. And the thought is, can we get this under one individual, one person control, and again, assure we have compliance from a record keeping standpoint, from a hiring standpoint, for all the things that are listed in here. And the thing that really precipitated the change now was this is exactly what he's talking about from the PR side of things. And as I've looked at more and I'm getting more familiar with what the Career and Technology Center has, what some other districts have, just about everybody has an HR position. And I've worked closely with HR people in the Career and Technology Center, and it is a very ironclad system, especially in terms of hiring, record keeping, those sort of things, people coming in and out, compliance with so many different, again, federal, state laws, some local. So I thought this is an opportunity to take a look at what skills do we have in-house right now? What skills do we need? And is there a way to, again, really make this an ironclad situation for the overall human resources side of things, coupled with the, again, I think the added icing on the cake, maybe adding the public relations also.
First, the $4,000, that's after the current overtime that was spent, correct?
Correct. The position right now for 22-23 tentative numbers, the individual that I would recommend for the position would be making about $59,301 for her salary for 22-23. She averages about $7,000 in overtime. And then, so we've already budgeted about $66,301 is in the budget for that position. So you'd be looking at an increase in the change from a support staff person to an admin position of about $36.99, which is about $3,700.
So her total, the person's or the position's total salary would be around $70,000.
Correct. And then you already have benefits in it. So that, you know, would be pretty much a ladder. She would, the athletic, the Act 93 side would pay 13% versus the 10% on the benefit side, but which would then wash out because you get more vacation days and support staff.
So it's really not $4,000. It's about $10,000, a little over $10,000 to make the change. If we did not, and there would be no overtime in that new position.
You would take the 7,000 out of what's in the budget right now is you would take the 7,000 out of the budget that's in there right now for overtime for that position, but you'd have to put in about 3,700. But you also have a little bit more in vacation side of the house. So that's where the extra money comes in.
But that position would not be able to get overtime then because it becomes an administrative
salary, right? So whether you work 80 hours a week or you work 40 hours a week, it's still the same amount of money. That's why the 7,000 in overtime would come out. Currently budgeted at, but the overtime is in the budget right now, so.
And are there other responsibilities that would be removed from this individual so they would have the time to devote to the HR and the PR situation?
Yes, they'll be reallocated within the business office, which is a lot of it would be the grants and the finances. And
We have to add a person to.
no, not it. Well, that would depend on what you do with the other.
I was gonna say that.
That goes with the other position. She would be able to do, I mean, the money side of it, we're working on cross-training and doing some other pieces now as we're strengthening other areas now that the business office is fully staffed with the positions that we just filled. So we're doing a lot of reallocating then. We would not, depending on what you do with the next position, would be whether that position would be added for 22-23 or for 23-24.
We'll talk more about this during budget.
Yes.
Our budget meeting. I mean,
Yes.
that is,
Absolutely.
okay.
I just want to make sure it was in front of us as soon as possible because of the budget. So we can do some planning if we are going to move forward or how are we going to handle the whole HR situation as well as the public relations side.
Yeah, there's no action on it this week. We're just bringing it to starting the discussion tonight.
But we'll discuss it again.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Correct me if I'm wrong, I see that we're adding 2 positions, not just one.
Number 10 is just adding one position.
It's fine.
And it's assistant superintendent, what's the difference?
That's going to be number 11. No, that's the next discussion point.
Right, but still overall, now we're talking about adding 2 positions.
Well-
So we're not going about just the $10,000 like you said.
That's the
We're
next comment I'm
looking-
gonna make, as soon as we get to the number 11.
Slow down, will you?
No, you're all right. You're-
All right,
You just want it, you're
you're-
one ahead.
You got me moving, I'll tell you.
Right. Right now, it's only
I
the,
just wanted to let him finish number 10 before I start number 11.
Number 10 is basically an expansion of somebody's current position.
correct. And then based on what happens with number 11, like, and the comment with the person at number 10 would help. If you don't do number 11 until 23-24, she would still assist with some of the grant stuff with me until 23-24, just because she and I work very well together. And she understands that and is very willing to do that extra time in order to make that jump. As an administrator, understands that it would take more time that first year in order to get that administrative job. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean.
So if, in order to do that, knowing that it's only a 1-year deal. And then number 11, which will also be discussed on the 22nd at finance as well, if you want me to just go on the next one.
Sure.
Is also the preliminary discussion about the transition. As most of the board is very well aware that my contract terminates December 31st of 2023. So the transition plan for the next superintendent and the hiring of the assistant superintendent, whether that be for 22-23 or 23-24, or this, what that looks like, the board will need to start to talk about succession planning in the budget that was presented at the January meeting or the December, whenever it was, I put it out there, did include in the sheet for an assistant superintendent and then that person's secretary, which is a budgetary increase, additional expense of about $261,195, which was budgeted for, or on the sheet for 22-23 at that number. Mr. Heckman has had a personnel ask for a preliminary discussion tonight as to, in preparation for the 22nd. So I will turn it over to Mr. Heckman to take it from there.
Well, I have a handout for the board members. This is a combination of information from the past. So some of it's a little bit older. When we went through Dr. Shank's contract and looked at the timing, we knew we would have to have a succession plan. I worked with the Berks County Intermediate Unit, in particular Dr. Jill Hackman, to get her input. And basically, we looked at 4 options. And again, what I'd like to do is just give preliminary information now. We can have more information, more discussion at the combined committee meeting as well as the budget meeting. But we basically were looking at options A versus in D. B and C obviously were too long a transition, very costly to the district. But what we're really looking at is what can we do to transition? And when we look at Dr. Shank's retirement really coming in at the end of December of 23, what's the best? And we looked at, again, options A and D. One would be a one-year transition, meaning the budget we're looking at now, we would be having a half a year increase for the assistant superintendent starting in January of 23. So that individual could come on board, be part of the budget process, part of the preparation for the next school year and the like, in terms of school planning, getting involved in the finances, as well as the academic preparation for the next year. So again, option A would be, I think, half of what Dr. Shank would, half the amount that you have listed on the sheet here. This would just be 6 months worth of salary and benefits. The other option, option D, would be a 6-month transition, bringing somebody in basically January of 23, having them work 6 months of 23 with Dr. Shank. But by then, the budget would be in place, the academic, all the academic schedules and the like would be put in place. That individual would just be learning for 6 months and then going in through a transition. So I think that's one of the things we're going to have more discussion on. Again, B and C are, in my mind, off the table. We're past some of those dates anyway. But do we look at a one-year transition for an assistant superintendent coming in basically as the next superintendent, or we go with the 6 month as a superintendent-elect? That individual would be coming in directly called the superintendent-elect to then take over the reins 6 months from that. Again, it's a lot of discussion decisions we have to make. How much transition do we really want the individual to have? How much experience do we want them to have with the Oley Valley system before they take over the reins in Oley Valley?
Mr. Heckman, my question is, what will happen to the assistant superintendent position and the secretarial position once we choose A or D?
I'm sorry, once we choose,
A or D?
I guess once Dr. Shank retires, we'd be back to just a one superintendent position. That's it. That's
So that will disappear,
well, that,
that position will.
like I said, next board's going.
that's a decision where the Oley Valley School Board is going to have to make.
Okay.
The secretary would stay. You have to have the secretary.
Secretary would stay, but you'd have to make a decision. Do you want to add a position of assistant superintendent to assist the new superintendent? That's what you'd have to make a decision. Right.
Why does the secretary have to stay?
Because you wouldn't have one.
I'm kind of confused. We're going to, this
Couldn't we
superintendent.
just hire a temp?
Talking about adding a secretary for the assistant superintendent.
Right, because you have to remember that I barely have 25% of the
Wow.
secretary as it is. Because the number 10 potentially could be your HR person,
Right.
so that there would be no secretary.
Ah, okay.
You see,
So you have to hire a new secretary if we decide on the
Gotcha.
HR.
Well, I think we're going to
Yeah.
hire a secretary either
Yeah.
way eventually. But
But the,
right.
but will.
So if
the
you don't do
the
HR, then you
assistant-
don't need a secretary.
Okay.
But
I
yeah,
got it.
And that's what
so I'm
trying
trying not
say.
to use names.
Exactly right.
So we're hiring 3 people, not just 2.
well, again, one's already in place, basically.
One there.
One would be,
One's there.
Moving in advance.
Correct.
and one would be,
Plus
She
2
could be moving and
additional.
advancing.
one would be a promotion,
Yes,
and then you would hire 2 others.
well, would stay the same.
What's the difference between assistant superintendents and assistant of the superintendent? I believe there is.
Yeah,
What
it's
difference?
assistant 2. The difference would be one would be a commissioned officer and one's usually not a commissioned officer.
What's the plus and minuses?
One doesn't require no letter of eligibility and one does.
And.
And,
Money.
and some, one, and
How
sometimes.
much money are we talking?
Oh,
uh,
it could be,
Could be,
$100, it could be 10,000.
An assistant to superintendent is kind of / secretary, is that? another way to go?
We actually had discussed this, just so you know, just getting it out there.
No, I'm sure.
No,
you
we
did.
discussed it. And what was pointed out to us right away by Dr. Hackman, I believe, was the fact that if we offered up as an assistant to the superintendent, we might not get a lot of people applying for the position because it doesn't guarantee them the seat. And people who are going to come in here as assistant superintendent are going to assume that they're going to be the next superintendent. That's the whole idea here. So,
And it's contractual.
and it's right. It's an assistant superintendent is actually a contractual obligation, whereas it's just who the superintendent would not be. But so that would give us more control over the position. You're going to get a lot less candidates.
Or lowest
Okay.
quality.
And less
And
cost.
timing is another issue.
Hmm?
Timing is another
Right.
issue. When
Yes.
it comes to hiring a superintendent.
So who does the HR essentially now? You?
Most of it.
Okay, so if we hire an assistant superintendent, why then couldn't he or she do that?
They could,
They could.
I mean,
they could.
some of that or whatever.
The thing about that, for that position though, Mr. Kelly, is the amount of money that would be spent for that position. And
That's
see,
about
as
100.
I sit here, and we'll discuss this when we get to the budget and finance, but I would not even consider hiring anyone until the last year of Dr. Schenk's contract. And because of timing, I would not even consider posting till January of that year. And then to look at interviewing and get that person on board because of the number of the superintendents who get their letters at the end of May.
Mhm.
So it's, sometimes you can think you're gonna do better by getting it early, but you're not doing better by getting it because there's a bigger crop
Coming
come
out.
out.
Right.
So, and then when I look at numbers, and I look at that number, wow. Okay, and I have to tell you, that's the job that this young lady is doing, hour after hour after hour alone. And not to have that support is very difficult. And she's been doing this for years, as an assistant superintendent,
Or facilities.
or facilities, or,
Cafeteria.
and that's safe,
Or-
this district. A lot of money, boatload of money.
And to be painfully honest, that's going to be up to something we discuss with who we interview for.
Yes,
Superintendent's going to have to know whether they're going to get one or not, assistant. That might make a difference to them. So.
it will make a difference to
It
that
will make a
person.
difference.
Yeah, and you have to, what skill set you want.
Yeah.
Because that's got, like, my strength is curriculum. Oh, as you know, I can talk forever like I did at ag, but
Yes.
the curriculum is, and grant writing is my strength, and the facilities was my strength. Politics is not my strength. Keeping my mouth shut is not my strength. I'm too transparent. I am too
You're
blind.
good.
I know that surprises you. I
I
know.
did.
But, that's just me. I'm not a handshaker. I'm not gonna go out and shake hands, kiss babies. That's not me. I'm a worker. Like one of the greatest compliments you gave me at the ag meeting was I'm a workhorse. That's who I am.
So
Credit where credit's
we have to really think
You know,
about this
but
when it comes time.
What do you want to lead this
About
district?
what you want to do.
Right.
And at this point, when I look at numbers, with Dr. Schenk working with me to try and come up with good numbers, it's just not in my game right now to say I want to spend that kind of money for an extra year when we have her. So we should always lean on her and,
That's
use
right.
her to the point that we're paying her until we need to select the appropriate candidate to fill the position.
So then I have a question. So when did you say the crop was coming?
I don't know if I use crap.
Crop.
Oh, crop.
There's a lot of crap out there.
The best crop,
Oh my
Uh,
God, you
the
don't want to know.
best crop. It's the man.
Oh,
The best crop, I would think you would know your best candidates, probably if you started to post February, March, they'll know they're gonna get their letters. That would be a good time in the year 23 to post.
It will.
Again,
So
you tell
February,
me.
March, right? And you
Well,
you
January,
anticipate,
February.
You'd want to
Okay.
go out in January, early February, because the other thing you need to remember is that 23 is an odd year. An odd year is a board election year.
Yes.
And anybody who knows that their boards are going to change is going to be looking for another position. Because I can tell you right now, there must be 6, 7 positions that are open. There's several in Berks County alone that are coming open. I mean, Exeter just opened this week alone. That boards and openings people, good superintendents can name their districts right now. So you've got to get out in front of the market to get quality, because there's a lot of bodies out there that want to do this, but there's a lot of people that are interviewing, you can't find people. I mean, I know you went through BCTC and interviewed, and I know some districts that have been looking, but that you need to get out in front of the pack. And then be able to do that. You don't want to wait too long, especially if you're going to run a full process with community input, and you're going to have teacher input and administrative input. And and be able to run a full-blown process.
Is there anybody in-house that is?
All three principals are qualified now?
They're all certified, correct?
So all three of our principals
All
have their,
have letters in.
They're all
So they
certified.
could be,
yeah, they
they
can
could
apply.
be, and then they would, they are potential. Okay.
If they were apply.
The three, the elementary, middle, and high.
Yes, they're all certified.
So, Dr. Mark, it sounds like you're, again, just looking at your comments here, you would look at option D. Which,
I'm just
I know, you're just one, but I'm just trying
one
to,
guy.
right, but.
I would look at option D and I would not spend a nickel.
If we went in that direction, that would mean that this upcoming budget, that those items in number 11 would be removed from the budget.
Absolutely.
I just want to make sure everybody understands that.
Just dropped your millage down to 499.
Oh, keep going. Good job.
Sorry, we're just, all we're doing is kicking.
Okay, I'm gonna
You're
keep
kicking a
beating the
can,
drum
but
on
you
this,
still have a
so we
year.
know as we go down the path that we're ready at the right time. But we'll discuss it more at the budget meeting, Dr. Markley. And I think that's all I have for personnel. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else on the board got a question? Anybody in the audience got any questions on the? That does include benefits as well.
The superintendent's salary, or the assistant superintendent's salary, that number is budgeted at about 145,000, and then the rest of it is healthcare, dental, FICA, retirement, all the benefit packages goes with it. The same thing, the salary is, the secretary's salary is about $15.50 an hour, but it also has all the healthcare with it. And family insurance, just from district perspective, is about 25,000. But it has the retirement is, we're paying like 35% on it. Yeah, it's a total package. number.
Compensation. Anybody else? If we want a policy, Mr. Beckett.
Mr. Pollock, we have one item on the agenda, and that's to approve the following new policy, 2 intersection programs for the first reading as listed.
30 days. This is a 30-day reading. I can't imagine anybody's already read these things already, so unless anybody has.
Maria's
I said, I
read
can't imagine anybody's already read the policies already, but maybe you already have.
I started.
Okay.
Question.
Go ahead.
Where do I start? Didn't bring my, okay, I jumped to, I think one was the 200. I did post it on screenshot. So my questions were in regards to enrollment. I understand about the homeless kids, like, surfing at the couch. But what concerns me is not checking citizenship requirements.
Is it for
Am
enrollment?
I don't have it in front of me. So there was actually in, okay.
I think it said you can't ask citizenship that. I think it's
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the policy says you can't ask what the citizenship status of the child is.
Thank you.
Yeah, because I did read over a couple of parts too, and
I think you're right,
legally you
Nancy. I
can't,
think you
legally
can't,
you
cannot
can't
ask.
ask. If they live in your district, you
You
are
have
responsible
an
for
address.
providing education.
Valid
Um,
address.
Yeah, and then it says, well, some of them you will require about their residency, some of them you're not asking about the residency. So it was a very conflicting and confusing, because who's to say there are not going to be some kids of illegal immigrants put in our school district? And how do you?
You have to take them.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter, you have to take them.
Yep.
It's not new.
We have technically homeless kids on our school.
Well, I understand the homeless kids.
But illegal
Those-
immigrants, yeah, we can't ask questions, you take them anyway. As long as they live here, you take them. If they're homeless, you take them. If they're foster, you take them. As long as they live here, you take them.
Yep.
And how do you know that they live here?
You take the residency, if you have an address, a proof of residence, the lease, the mortgage, the driver's license, the utility bill, any of that kind of stuff.
I used to drive out
When,
and rap on the door.
Yeah, we do that.
yeah, because I, like, some of the concerns that I've heard, even the local landlords, they said nobody checks for the last 5 years.
Yeah, we do. We call the
Nobody
landlord.
I've been out
required.
6 years. I've been out.
Yep.
So I used to really enjoy that job.
Yeah, we do that. Usually just send Dr. Rohr. He's always the one that goes.
It's with, and sometimes on that trip, I would find some people and bring them back to school
Yep.
that should have been in school.
We do welfare checks with the police. We send them out sometimes. We call the landlords. Then we get yelled at by the parents who call because we call the landlords and they don't really live there. We call the police. We call children and youth. We do all that. Then they get custody
Now,
orders.
you're saying, I mean, you're saying the kid just showed up here and you want to know who he was from, at least where he lived.
Yeah,
You're saying.
they have to prove it. Yeah.
Okay, so that's what initiated the call.
Mhm.
The kid showed up at school on his
Kid-
own or her own. or
Yeah,
whatever.
I mean, they have to come, they have to enroll, they have to,
Okay.
their parent has to sign them in. There's a whole packet of
But
forms.
you
have to
called,
sign
you
up.
had to call because it didn't show up for a couple weeks or something.
Yep, then we go find them.
Oh.
We go to the house, we knock on the door.
I wasn't
Could
call
be
the
attendance.
police.
I wasn't sure
Could
what
be
you were talking
attendance.
about.
Or
Yeah.
we want to make sure they have a valid location,
Sure.
address, not just an apartment somewhere that they put down.
Or PO box.
PO box.
Yeah,
That students that
We-
live in other districts go to school here because
Yep.
they used to live here, and they just still use the same address. So
Yeah.
she's gotta go verify those too.
And we check the tax rolls and the per capita rolls and census and all that stuff. It's really fun when they actually try to use their ex's the ex's address and they broke up and then we go knock on the door and find out that they used the wrong one. Yeah,
Sticky.
it gets a little sticky sometimes.
okay. Then I saw the change as far as eligibility, like, and it was parent, and then I think resident was added, but I didn't have a chance to reference the old policy. So resident is a very broad description. Is there any,
For where? What
Let's
policy?
go on enrollment.
it was,
You're on 202.
What number?
it was, it's probably 202, the guidelines,
Eligibility. of
eligibility, yes. Shouldn't it say parent or legal guardian? Because resident is a very broad description. So
Resident,
anybody can be resident and the kid can be just dropped off and say, hey, he lives here. Am I right?
I need to know where you are and
It's on 202 on the guidelines. At least it's in my notes.
non-resident children placed in a resident's home. So that way-
No, there says parent and then a resident. I have not looked at the whole previous policy to see what it said. Shouldn't be parent / legal guardian. Because residents seem to be resident was the bold.
I have a non-resident placed in a resident's home. Child placed in the home of a district resident by a court or government agency.
Okay, well,
That's a foster child.
yeah, that was different. There was some, I think,
Admitted to a district school receives the same benefit. That's a foster child. We have a lot of them.
totally understand. I
When you say a
don't-
lot, I mean, what, you're talking like 50, 100,
For our district, we
Yeah.
probably have 15 to 20.
oh, 15, 20.
Yeah, that's a lot for us.
That's, okay, that's
Yeah, we used to have like 2 to 3. Yeah, just like we have a lot of homeless.
the homeless thing is still, I can't wrap my head around.
Yep.
Yeah, it was just like, I started to look at them and
Yep, just
so
submit
I will
questions.
I will find where I
Yeah.
saw that the parent / resident, because in that sentence, in that content, it was a very overbroad statement.
Yeah, residence is a legal term more so than parents, because the resident, you could be a resident and not be a parent or guardian, because you could be boyfriend and guardian, you could be a boyfriend or girlfriend and actually have custody of somebody else's child. You can have a court order.
Yeah, but
We have
still-
grandparents, we have all of that.
Isn't that word custody already says it's a legal guardian?
Not necessarily. We have a lot of 13, we could have 13, what's called a 1302, which is a parent, and like an in loco parent guardianship. We have grandparents who the children have been dropped off at the grandparents and the parents just take off and they are just left there. So there is no really any court order or any documents that are governing that. We have the foster, we have the homeless, we have a lot of really kind of very unique custody issues.
How in the world do you handle the homeless, like where they live? I mean,
Be couch hopping, right?
Yeah,
We staying with a friend or something.
if we have that, we have kids that are just kicked out of their homes, parents who just take off and then the students are just left on their own accord and
they're just staying with a friend or
Yep.
maybe a relative or something.
they come home and the parents are gone. Or they're locked out of the house, or you've had situations where the house was sold and the parents took off and never told the child.
Oh my.
I mean, it's just a different world. So just let me know your questions, send them to me and I'll answer them.
Yeah, this is gonna put them on, this just puts them on the list for first reading. So we won't
Just first
actually, we won't
reading.
be approving these until
To March.
March.
Yeah, and I would like to ask all the constituents, actually, please read the policies, please bring your questions, bring your concerns, so they could be properly answered. Because I know it has been put on the board members to read the policies, but it's everybody's responsibility.
Like drinking from a fire.
It is. It's a lot, and any feedback is greatly appreciated.
Any discussion on the board? Anybody in the audience have any questions on the policies? Ooh, good here. Okay. Dr. Markley.
Just like Dr. Shank said, how much she loves curriculum.
I know.
Go right at it.
It's okay. All right. Go ahead, Doc.
All right, number one is the annual federal programs equity plan, basically saying that our our low income students are not taught by our non-highly qualified teachers, which just means that teachers that have less than 3 years experience only applies to elementary, and our elementary teachers are our most veteran staff, so that's not an issue. Has to be submitted every year as part of Title I. Number two is the 22-23 dual enrollment agreement with Alberni University, so our high school students can get lots of credits. Number two is our 22-23 agreement with Alberni University for our pre-college contract, which allows our students to go there and take classes on campus for a very reduced tuition rate. We do have a student this year that's actually doing it, taking half of her college classes there, go in as a junior next year at Albernia.
Transportation costs covered by.
Parent.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. And number four is our first year of our agreement for dual enrollment classes with PA College of Health Science in the Oley Valley School District for the second semester of 21-22 and all of 22-23 for both in-person courses as well as online courses at a reduced rate, which aligns well with our academy in biomedical or STEM Academy in biomedical science. And the Penn Tech one is almost done. You'll see that one coming shortly. Thaddeus Stevens won't do an agreement with us. So we're still working on that one. I put Gina on it, so we're working on it. Number five is a student-teacher agreement with Gwen Mercy School of Business and Education for fieldwork for placement of student teachers. We got that one through, so we can become one of their placement schools. Number six is the Vector Solutions, Professional Growth Solutions online training for 22-23. The Exceptional Child Course Bundle is for our professional staff. That one is the online training that we do for de-escalation, crisis, all the classroom educational things. And the second one is our Safe Schools online training for Alice and our safety training for next year. That is all of our mandated required training under Act 44. Costs are listed for you. And number seven, 30-day review for plan course outlines for Spanish 2, Ag Engineering Power Tech, and Animal Plant Biotech.
Clarify the amount on the exceptional child 22 course. Looks like it's
$1 million. Oh, the 1,000, it's 1,113.
1,113.
Yeah, I have an
not
extra one on
11,000.
that one.
Yeah, I was about ready to, thank you, doctor. I was about ready to
11
say
million,
something.
1,100,000. Here's your budget number.
1,013.
Didn't type yesterday. Sorry about that.
Just cross off the one.
Just cross off the one.
Gotcha.
Got a little worried about that.
Me too. Any
Yeah, one's
questions
1 and 1's 4.
on 1 through 7?
Yeah, just the equity thing, like I read through the whole thing, like that, like I saw, it's like, oh, this is changing, you know, that.
Yep.
So I'm like, okay, it seemed like a lot of,
It's a lot of work for nothing,
yeah,
but it got it $320,000.
I was
So
just gonna ask you how much it got.
we got $320,000 for 2 hours of work, so I'll take it.
I get it.
Paid for 4 teachers.
And one last thing for curriculum, Dr. Schenk, would you explain anyone who has a book challenge? Our curriculum committee did read the books that were asked me to read, and then as I was reading the second one for about the third week, I wondered if we had a policy for, since we have so many policies, I asked Dr. Schenk if we actually had a form that someone would like to fill out if they have a challenge to a book. Because the first book that I received was very rapid reading, and we all read it. But the second book, I have not passed this to Mrs. Jackson yet. And now I will probably pass it to her tonight. Interesting reading. I will not comment on that book yet. But Dr. Schenk, would you quickly just sum up what, if someone does have a book that they would like to question?
Yeah, we've had policies and the forms of policy 109, and there is forms that have to be filled out on formal and informal book challenges, in which you have to write, if you've read the whole book, specifically what you're challenging, what your recommendations are, what specifically in the book you're objecting to, what do you like about it, what do you believe is the theme of the material, what you're aware of the critics, what you want to substitute for it. You have to sign it. Then it goes through a whole review committee led by the principal with a whole team. And then it goes through and then there in a whole process in which the teachers and the committee goes through and reviews it. And then they write up a report, then it comes back through as far as whether or not they believe that the book should be removed or kept on the shelves. So there is a whole process that's been on play, and we've used it several times over the last 12 years.
Yes, we have. I just wanted to bring that forward for you. Not that I didn't appreciate you giving me those books.
Does that include books used in curriculum or just books? found
It's
in the
all.
library?
All.
Okay.
Yep. Process is the same.
What is the process for
Or
purchasing a new book in the library?
it's we go through, it's the same, the selections are recommended to usually the English department. And then it goes through the administration, and then they have to justify it off of the national, what we call the gold seal programs. It has to be recommended out of the literature for adolescents here at the high school. And then usually off of the Rating Olympics list. And then, so it has to be recommended by the kind of the best of the best reading lists. It just can't be like open Google and find a book and pull it off of that. We only use those that are research-based, kind of out of the national database, so to speak.
And I can tell,
Pardon? And nonfiction, both.
and I can tell you, as an experienced person that used to look at the list, that this library used to have shelf, the whole way across.
Mm-hmm.
And every year I was bombarded by individuals that would come over and say, I need more money, I need more money, I need more money. And I would eventually hide.
Yeah.
Because they wanted to purchase more and more and more and more. And then eventually, with the internet and everything going online and curriculum and teachers saying they need this, things change. There used to be box after box when I got here 20 years ago coming in. And I would always say, where did that come from? And the answer was, we had a list. And I always said, well, let me see that list. And honestly, I never saw that list. So eventually, the principal decided that I would look at the numbers of money in budgets, which didn't go over very well. So some books at that time, 20 years ago, I think it was just a list and they got them. Now our procedure is more with Dr. Shank to say the validity of that book, where it's related to a course or a need, rather than just, it just arrived.
We don't honestly, because they have so much that they can get on either online books or Audible or we really don't put a lot of money into our libraries anymore. Because they can get so much either through the university libraries and some of the other stuff. That's why, like Dr. Markley said, there used to be shelves the whole way across. It's not a place where we put tax dollars. So what you have are maybe $1,000 a year on what the English department or the social studies department wants. Other than that, we don't. Elementary, we do classroom libraries, but that's usually just nonfiction readers that they need to learn to read, but not really. A lot of that stuff's just biographies and trying to get them exposed to science concepts or social studies concepts. High school, like even that book he just pulled out, I can't tell you how long that's even been here. The pages are so yellowed. And we've been purging the libraries because a lot of the materials here haven't even been checked out in forever.
Circulation rate is what?
Next to zero. So we don't even really have a high school library. It's run by a paraprofessional because I didn't feel that we needed to put the money into a staff when they don't use it for research purposes. They'll go to Alberni, they'll go to Albright, they'll go to RAC, or even Lehigh or some of the other universities if they really need to do research versus coming here.
And we have that relationship with.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
With the stuff where.
Yeah, or we have an interlibrary loans that we'll have them send in, things like that, versus putting the money and having it on shelves here. So they'll come and they'll do the work here, but they don't necessarily have to have the books here. Because I have so much of it's just online, and then we have the whole library catalog is online. So.
Questions back? Oh, we have two. Either.
I don't think real quick. I just walked by there and picked up one book and just opened up the random page. First sentence was, what the F? Now, I know these kids hear that all the time, but to see it in a library book in your school.
I would think you'd probably like to see that in 150 to 200 books in here, because I'm sorry to say that this is from the 70s. And in the first 10 pages, I read that. Yeah. I would say to parents, if you don't want your children to read that book, don't read that book, just like wear a mask.
Well, like I said, I'm sure they hear it all.
They do, but yeah, I'm sorry you had to see that, but yeah, I'm sorry. I really am.
It's just the first one I picked up and the first page I opened.
I understand.
Can I ask what books are being questioned? Right now, I see that you held one up. Can you know the title of it?
Yeah, sure. I had two books come to me. One was Snow Crash by Neil Stevenson. Okay. And the other book was Beyond Magenta, written and photographed by Susan Hufflin. Okay. And then we also received some email from individuals who had given us a list of books to look at. That's it. And I do not recall those titles.
There was only 3 that we had on that list.
Okay. Yeah, I was wondering if they were asking if we had the. That's the way I read that email.
Yeah.
They were asking if we had them.
Yeah.
You say you only have.
We only had 3. The Hate You Give, All American Boys, On the Come Up. Or the only 3 on the email.
Three.
The 3 of the list that were emailed.
All American Boys?
All American Boys, On the Come Up, and The Hate You Give.
So the rest we did not have.
No,
Okay, thank you.
we checked all 3.
All right, appreciate that.
I have a question. You said that you had like rows and rows of the books. So what happened to them?
We purge library, we purge books, and then we donate them to, I use a foundation that donates them to third world countries so they can be reused.
And who decided which books were purged, which books stayed?
We look at circulation use, we look at condition, we look at whether or not they are on the, as we talked about, the updated list of whether they're actually viable for adolescents in 2021. But if we have some books like one we purged in out of the elementary a few years ago was one that said that someday man will walk on the moon. It doesn't belong in an elementary library because, man walked on the moon. So we purged that book. So if they're not relevant anymore, we do purge them.
I just was faced as a parent with a recent concern, recent as of today, that one of my children is losing the vision because of too much of the blue screen.
That what?
Too much of the screen time.
That's terrible.
Yes.
Seriously.
I got glasses for that though. I mean, just from a health standpoint. But
No,
yeah, I
I'm
understand.
going to be looking into that. Couldn't figure out what was going on. Had to take my child to the doctor, and it was already losing the vision. So now we're scheduling with the to me concern of removing the books and having so much screen time. And that was also raised that even the homework and schoolwork is all geared around the screen time. It's way too much screen time. And from a kid that had 20/20 perfect vision, all of a sudden having blind spots. So I would actually, as a parent, would bring it up in front of the board and see if the curriculum could be tweaked, what can we do? Because this is, I'm sure, more parents are going to be faced with the same dilemma. Because they're going home and they're doing another 3 or 4 hours, not just, 30 minutes, 3 or 4 hours, sometimes 6.
It's
On a
what give and
computer
take
screen.
these days, because the technology is such that, that's.
No, I understand, but this is like, I know we purged the library and removed the books, but, and just the way everything is structured is so much of the screen time. And it's getting very detrimental.
I
for
think,
kids.
what percentage of our textbooks are PC based online?
We have a lot of them that are in person, or, we have kids that are virtual that are on screens all the time because they're cyber.
But even our books that we're getting, the newer ones are most, yeah.
Yeah,
And it's slowly evolving to getting away from printed books anymore, isn't it really?
yeah, a lot of them. Well, we have both. We have some that are online and then we have hardback
Because
books too.
unfortunately, it's cheaper for them, it doesn't cost us any less. They charge the same amount of money, but don't give us books, they just give us,
Yeah, that's saving to the desktop.
digits.
Well, I think you'll find patient too, is we're not necessarily picking a book up and reading it from cover to cover.
It's
We're
research
pulling information
from it.
from this article here, we're watching this video. We're not, like, when we were in school, you picked your book up and you went stuck to chapter 1 and you went all the way through. And that's not how our students are reading right now. That's not how my college students, I'm constantly changing my curriculum because no, they don't read the books because that's not what they're used to. They're pulling information. It's like when we Google something, we find a bunch of different resources and we come up with it. And that's kind of where education is going, where I don't think you're going to be reading 50, 60 pages from a book each night.
Or it's all project based.
I don't think you're going to slow down technology with the way it's going, but there are solutions to that. We're going to have a whole discussion on that, or I could dazzle you with my knowledge, but I won't do that. But there are some solutions that can be done for that. And, these
So
are things.
Zach, I would appreciate sharing, because I'm sure there's other parents over there that.
Well, she's got a valid point. There certainly can be eye strain and those sorts of things, but I'm not going to get into that tonight. I don't want to do all this
They can put it
anymore,
on the
but
agenda for, seriously, for down the road. because it's-
Or you could put out a recommendation or something that we can actually share on the internet.
Question back.
Not reading from.
A lot of notes, they do their notes on their computer. It really depends on the grade level. They're doing research, they're doing a lot of their projects, they're doing their note taking. We do have students that do part of their day because of their choices doing their online, they take some of their independent studies online. So they may do some of their courses here in the library and doing their online independent studies. But they're not they're not on their computers for the entire 40 minutes of their class. They're doing their projects. It's more, we're really moving towards a more project-based where they're like research and writing. But it's not, but we do have kids that will, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, there's a student who does 3 online courses because that's what she chose to take. and is in the library for 3 periods doing 3 online BOL courses because that's what they chose. But the rest of their day, they're out in the mainstream in their classes on their computer, taking their notes while the teacher is teaching. So, you know, it kind of depends, but
They're not constantly on their
yeah.
computers.
No, but they're also on listening to their music, they're playing their games, and they're talking to their friends, and they're on their cell phone, and they're texting their parents, and, you know, or they're sitting at their lunch table, and I'm texting Mr. Heckman, and he's sitting right across from me, and, you know, they're kids, that's what they do. And that's, you know, but that's what their generation is. But I can tell you the elementary's not. Middle school is off of them more than they on, unless they're, you know, they're using them for other resources. Yeah, right. And I know some students, right. I can tell you I can tell you a couple parents that we had the FID day on Friday who believed that their students were doing all their homework for hours on end on Friday when they were in the FID day and worked so hard only to find out the work didn't get done, but they weren't doing our work. But they were having a good time talking to their friends and doing their video gaming, you know, so it's a matter of what they're doing on. But our expectation is not that they're on them from the time they show up at 7:35 until lunch and then from after lunch to the end of the day. That is not, that is not how we teach.
And no, that child does not play video games at all.
Anybody else?
I was curious about Alberni. I graduated from Alberni. How does the school work with Alberni? Are they actually teaching classes here that get dual credit for high school and college? Is that how that works?
Yes. Our courses have been approved for Alberni. It's actually 2 different programs. A lot of our courses here have been approved for Alberni at college credit at a very reduced rate. And then they will transfer not only to Alberni, but to any other university that you want to attend to. And then we also have our Alberni, what we call our pre-college contract, which you can actually leave here, whether it's in the summer or half day or evening college courses, in which you can actually go there and take college courses on campus, which also count for us, but also count for their program. So some of the things that we don't offer, or we have a student right now, she's a senior, who is so far advanced from us that she's maxed out on our English and some of our social studies. She actually goes there and takes their courses. So she's already like advanced and I'm gonna actually finish early at Alberni and start her master's degree on what would have cost her parents for her bachelor's. And because it's part of our program, we pay for it. Pardon? Yes. Yep.
Good. Okay.
Hey, Transportation Committee. The motion to approve the following van and bus drivers for 21-22 school year: Charles Traber, William Harrison, Barry George. I have no idea who they are.
Mr. Travers is middle school assistant principal.
Yep.
Harrison.
High school assistant.
Okay. I thought that, I don't know.
Just a van driver. Just we finally got hiring drivers.
Okay.
Oh,
Just people who work here.
Yep.
okay.
Oh, okay.
So does anybody say to you why they can't find drivers?
Would you want to drive?
I don't know, but the thing is, the question is, yes.
I'm being
why is
very
this
serious. Has anybody asked the question, why can't we find drivers?
My understanding is, and it's just what I'm reading, so I don't know how accurate it is, just that a lot of school van drivers are older. And when COVID hit, they decided, I'm out, and now they're retired. So now they're trying to find people to fill those positions. Other retirees are like, yeah, I'm not doing that anymore.
Well, and the other,
That's what I heard.
the other thing tied in with that, I've had a lot of conversation around the county because of the Career Technology Center, what's going on there. And you're right, the retirees don't want to come back at all because of COVID. Those that are, say, 40s and 50s are the younger folks who want to come back. They want much higher salaries. They want benefit packages. They want all those things, which right now are not in most of the transportation contracts. So it's not attractive for people to take those jobs from a financial or benefit standpoint. So it's a mess all throughout the county. It's not just Oley Valley.
Are they giving the bus drivers any kind of, extra how should I say, duties that they may not want to perform. Responsibilities like disciplining kids, hey, put your mask on,
So
whatever,
That could be part of it.
nonsense.
That could be part of it.
I'm just asking the question, because if we're missing out on good drivers because of
we have drivers that don't,
nonsense.
the CDL is not an easy test to pass. It takes a while. We've had people in the CDL process, but then end up not being able to pass the physical. You have to be able to pass the under the hood test, which is not easy either,
Under
because
the hood?
you have to do the under the hood.
You mean the pre-trip?
Yep, the whole engine piece. You have to learn all of that. It's more than just driving. You have to do the whole medical. You got to do the road piece of it. You're on a bus with 65 teenagers or elementary students. It doesn't always fit everybody's schedule. They're not overly paid well. And then after a while, I mean, you're driving in all kinds of weather. You're on a bus by yourself. No matter what you do, and honestly, talking to a lot of our drivers, and we've got some really great drivers. I mean, we are very fortunate with some of our best drivers, is that it's one of the most, the way you're treated by students and honestly some adults, it's probably one of the most ungrateful positions to be
Well,
in.
that was my other point. I know a guy that used to do it for another school district. You can't even almost stop the bus and just stop a kid from,
Yeah.
like even just turning around and see yelling at him, you're almost getting reprimanded as
Yep.
you're doing it. Can we get real here? I mean, seriously, like, this is a dangerous thing if a kid's acting up on a bus.
Mhm.
He's in the aisle and you gotta stop quick.
Yep.
A bus driver has to get reprimanded for actually telling a kid to sit down. You know what I mean? Or he does it loud enough and scares the kid, and then somebody's parent gets irritated because they yelled at my kid.
There's the issue. It's not
But
the
there
driver,
has to
it's the
be
parent.
something done.
Yep. And then we throw them off the bus, or then we suspend them from the bus, and then
You know what I'm saying?
parents try to get on the bus, or the bus runs late, and then the bus driver gets yelled at because it gets stuck, like even with all the construction, or if you were, 12 was closed because they were trimming trees, and then the buses got delayed, and then they were closed in the ice, and then somebody's late, or then we have, it's not a fun job. I mean, we try to do everything we can to reward and show gratitude to our drivers. And even the van drivers and the vans do not run well in ice or snow, so we try to work with them.
Do they offer any kind of other benefit? Pretty much just a part-time job. You just get
Just a
salary.
part-time job,
Yeah, I figured,
So an employment, and it fits around the school schedule if you have children, that's about it.
And we have great people on those buses.
Yep, we do.
The one thing that this district has always done, Mr. Kelly, and you probably wouldn't know this, but we have supported those drivers when they have been attacked, when they have been yelled at, when they have been stopped in the middle of the road. We have done so many things because of the cameras, because we can see the kids, and we have great kids. I mean, the 95% of those kids are on that bus, and they come to the principal in the morning and say, you need to take care of that girl right now. I can't take it anymore.
No, to your point, I never ever thought Oley was an issue. It was other districts.
We have issues, but we have done really well considering the other districts who are really scrambling. I mean, we've scrambled. We have great, loyal people, and they really do a great job. And the kids really like most of the drivers. I mean, the drivers always seem to get a nickname, and as an old principal, I used to know each driver. 20% of my day usually was buses. I mean, referrals and calling people and riding them, and and if you keep your bus drivers right, you usually have a better day. They know everything before it happens. I used to always tell them, tell me what you've seen, because they're the first line of defense. But we have great people, and you're right, that if there's a problem on that bus, sometimes it doesn't come from us, the problem, or the yelling.
Right.
It comes from somewhere else.
Be the parent.
Yeah,
I get it.
or
I'm just-
the company that they work for could come from them too.
That is a very key point. The company they work for, they're
Yeah.
not our employees. So contract with Quigley, and they're Quigley employees. So that creates another dynamic.
Well, we have a pretty good relationship.
Oh, yeah, yeah, oh, we do.
Yeah.
We do.
Yeah, we do. We do.
So as
But-
far as mandates, are they get mandated anything besides masks? Would that also be
Yeah,
a
they're not
problem?
making the drivers get vaccinated or what?
No.
Okay, they didn't, I wasn't sure about that.
No, that all went
Ah.
away.
Okay, I thought.
So the masks is pretty much kind of mandated, but it's,
It's federal. Still
yeah,
federal.
it's not even clearly.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
still.
Question?
Okay, quick question. If a kid gets lost on the spot, is it the parent's responsibility then to get them to school?
Unless they're special ed, yes.
If it's special ed, though, and they get tossed off the bus, you still have to go after them.
Yep. Okay. Doing activities, Ms. Jackson.
Okay. Number one is a donation from Lynn Leister for a snare drum to the elementary school. Approximate value is 200. Number two is a motion to close the student activities account for the class of 2020. If you remember, we did a motion to give them 18 extra months to spend their money. They chose not to. That money will be transferred to the class of 22. They are transferring $13,000. Number three is to approve and ratify the following out-of-county field trips: high school FFA, spring career field trip to Middle Creek. Wildlife management is going on March 18th, which is the half day, so it's 7:45 to 2:15. High school social studies and Mr. Scott Snyder working with Senator Schwank in the Model Senate on April 13th. Going to Harrisburg. FBLA and Mr. Hoffman, and 5 students have qualified for state FBLA competition at Hershey Lodge and Convention Center, April 11th to 13th. An elementary invention convention finalist with Mrs. Gardecki and Don Roman and Dr. Broski will be going tomorrow for the state competition at Hotel Hershey to compete with their device that they created tomorrow morning. And I have a typo, I got to correct that, from 8 a.m. to 3:15. And number 4 is extracurricular and co-curricular appointments compensation to the CBA.
Do you have any questions? Okay.
Questions from the audience? Okay, so Ms. Perry.
I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Shank.
For the board's suggestion box, I have included the suggestions that were put from January through and including Friday or Thursday when we posted the suggestions for the board's review on the agenda for tonight.
Oh, it's a love letter. Is that what you're holding up there?
What I had posted on the
Yeah.
website, that's this one.
Yeah.
Oh, no, this is mine.
It's a love letter addressed to me.
Oh, it's, they all run together. There's a bunch of topics in
I'm
there.
sorry.
Yeah,
Most of them
More or less.
most of them are not very nice.
Oh, I didn't see, I'm sorry. It's more Valentine's Day type.
Well, I don't know when she put it on.
I had it on Thursday.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, it's on the, right, it's on.
Oh, you want me to go through them?
No.
No, is there a topic, that could
I
be
think
valid
pretty well. I think
for
we covered it.
communications for the next, so I didn't get a chance to read the love letter.
Look at it, it's
Dog.
like full of.
I'll just-
I'm busy.
Is there anything that we could throw on for the next committee meeting?
Are we done? Are we wrapping it up? That was,
No,
Are we
we're
on
just
unfinished
looking.
business yet? No, okay.
No, we're still on
Still
communication.
trying to
Okay.
figure out if there's something for communication.
Actually, I read through them the other day and I thought there was something I thought, hey, that's interesting.
I had posted them on Thursday when I posted everything else.
They just don't. And there's multitudes of them really, they just kind of run together.
Yeah, I was kind of reading that. I'm like, it almost looked like they came from multiple.
I'm not sure how the suggestion.
Yeah, I'm not sure
This
how
is
that
online
would work.
suggestions, right?
Yeah, it's a Google Doc. They're all different people, but
So I'm not sure how,
Yeah.
once it's submitted, how it goes in, because you're right. I mean,
Yeah.
some just run on, some just stop. It rolls into the next one. You have to kind of read it.
It's under there.
that's just the way, way a P printer, the way it printed off.
No, it's under the. Go up, sorry.
So I think what we're looking at here, Barry, maybe we should just give a little bit more time for people to think about these topics to come up with committee.
Yes.
Give the community a little bit more time to
Yeah.
think about.
It kind of became a sounding board, which wasn't. the
Yeah, that
intent,
wasn't
but
the
That's
intent.
kind of what happened.
Give you a little more time to come up with.
I mean, I guess we.
Yeah, things that you're
Heard them on
suggestions
occasion
and
and
things
take
that you
one.
want discussed
Yeah.
at a meeting like this. You know, doesn't have to be, direct comments, just what your concern is about. Those kind of things.
That was the idea.
Yeah.
Anything else, Ms. Craig?
No.
Moving on to other, Dr. Schenk has made another revision or modification to the health and safety plan. Is that, I guess that's available in here. We don't have hard copies in front of us, right?
No, because you said send it out in advance and I did.
So I think everybody's had a chance to see it. So Dr. Craig, I'm guessing you had a comment.
No, not at all.
Okay, I'm
Sorry,
sorry.
unfinished business. That's
Okay,
something I want to bring up.
so, you just go over the long and short of it. We reduced a lot of.
Oh, sorry.
There's basically no more warrant.
Basically, our recommendation is that if the board is in agreement after Wednesday night's meeting, that we start to move into the endemic phase of COVID. And that unless the positive, of course, the positive cases need to quarantine for 5 days, wear a mask from day 6 through 10. But those, we have to close contact or trace, so to speak, and notify, just because that's required under the law, but not quarantine close contacts as long as those close contacts remain asymptomatic. If they become symptomatic, then they need to get tested, just out of safety. But other than that, then they remain in school and not have to quarantine. So basically, that is the biggest change, is that we do have to notify. So basically, if the board would end up being close contacts to everybody because Mr. Heckman ended up being positive, then everybody gets a robocall that says everybody was close contact. Was a close contact to a positive, but they don't have to quarantine as long as they become asymptomatic, and then they remain in school as long as they stay symptom-free. So it will take some of the pressure off the nurses, which have done a phenomenal job in all 3 buildings. Those ladies have just been outstanding. It will cut down on the number of live streaming that the teachers have been going through, but most importantly, it will keep more students in school. The number of percentage that we've been seeing in the students who have been close contacts who are coming up positive is going down as the numbers in Berks County have been decreasing. The Omicron variant we've been hearing from the emergency personnel that we work with as a county, as they're saying that we're through the major wave at this point. So our recommendation is that we kind of move more towards an endemic stage, starting on the 10th, and then kind of monitor it and then revisit it in March to make sure that we're not going back up again, and see where it goes. We do need to just kind of, keep monitoring it. As we know, it's not going away. It's going to still be one of our communicable diseases under the Department of Health, and not going to, it's going to be around just as the flu and the measles and everything else that we deal with as a school. But that is our recommendation. That's what the draft that you have in front of you, or mine, I should say, and then I sent out via email, states. There will be people who won't be happy with it, but honestly, I don't think anything that I recommend at this point is going to make everybody happy. But I think for the school district and the educational system and keeping our students in school, I think it'll be the best moving forward at this point. The key is that students need to remain asymptomatic. Yes. Yes.
I have a question in regard to close contact. So how do we define it?
The same way we have been, 2 feet for 15 or more minutes consecutive.
Okay.
Which is generally.
Because there was also like, when I was reading, maybe it was before, it was like except, and then there was a whole big list of exceptions.
Yeah, those.
And if we have, just thinking outside the box, if we have a student who is contact traced and parents decide to keep them home,
That's on them, then they live stream.
they can live stream. Okay.
That's still parent choice.
That's, okay.
Do you need to have a positive test or a doctor's excuse to be able to do that, or?
To do,
The live streaming?
Yeah, like,
if you're contact traced,
oh,
That was my
oh,
question.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
if you're contact traced because Mr. Heckman's positive and you decide your child's gonna stay home,
Okay.
then you're good.
Okay.
Because it's still close contact. That's a parental choice. You just can't just say, I'm gonna stay home and just live stream. But if it's still related to COVID, you still have that choice. Or someone in your household is positive and you're gonna keep your child home, that's still related. It's just gonna take away the masses of the contact tracing for the masses. Won't need to stay home anymore. That's the biggest change. Which is, I think, aligns with what Dr. Fackin was sending out in his information.
So if they want to come back to school, they have to get tested first? Make sure that they.
If they're asymptomatic, they don't, correct?
Correct.
If they're asymptomatic, they do not.
Because you can't get tested.
Well, that is a problem. It's very hard to get tested right now.
We're all supposed to be getting boxes of them soon, right?
My son Caleb at Penn State Berks has to take a
Yes,
test.
the only
weekly,
people that
and he
really
couldn't
have,
get him for weeks.
Yeah.
And he was potentially not gonna be able to go for this, continue his classes, but thank God they finally came in, but there was a delay for a while on getting tests, so. Yeah. Yeah.
We're getting there.
Just take a deep breath.
We're getting there.
These tests.
Any other questions on that? So we'll go, so unless anybody's a problem, we'll probably end up approving that as he's written it on Wednesday. Okay. We'll move on to unfinished or new business.
I just want to point out good when I see good, and I think we're doing some really good things here in the school district. My son Ben is taking, I believe it's called Manufacturing Lab. And the stuff he's putting out is awesome. Like I said, I wish every kid would take like a wood shop type class. I think there's value in producing, actual production. I mean, I think just taking classes, getting knowledge is one thing, learning how to take tests, that's one thing. But I mean, the look on his face when he came home, and the production, I'm gonna bring some of the stuff in Wednesday night because he made some beautiful things. So that kind of stirred up some ideas in my mind as far as how we can serve these kids better. And there's definitely a trend that's occurring, I think, in our country where the trade skills, we are severely lacking trade skills. And I had a conversation with a constituent about this. I'm like, why is it always the kids that maybe they can't get into college, we should be pushing into the, and this, pushing into Vo-Tech. I'm telling you what, some of the brightest kids should be going into trades. Because we are as a country, we're in a dire need for trade skills. I see it in my office all the time. Electricians can't find employees, plumbers can't find, we're in some big trouble. So I don't know what we're doing as a school district to really try to promote moving into trades. Because I'm telling you what, people think of like small potatoes, like a guy just going to work on put a toilet in. I'm thinking, man, this can be so much better. You're gonna be able to name your price because there's gonna be such a lack. These guys can make great livings. And I'm like, and if you get some business skills with it, I'm like, you don't even have to be the guy changing the toilet or unclogging a toilet. I'm like, you could be the guy that has a business with 10 plumbers and just reaping the benefits of having a great business. So I don't know what we're doing as a school district. I mean, I would love that every kid take a wood shop class, or here at Oley, we had metal shop, we had wood shop, and we had mechanical drawing, and that was that back corner of that building. And I had some of my best classes back there, but just when my son Ben came home, just to see that, I mean, the accomplishment was huge, that he made something tangible, he produced something. And that was just, I get emotional about these things. I'm sorry. It's just, I always speak from the heart. That's just part of me. But I think we should be promoting these trade skills more than ever before because we need it. I mean, our country's in trouble. We need trades more than anything.
You're not the first time I've heard that.
Well, I think we are.
Well, you know what,
I
I
think
can
we're one
say,
of the few in the county that's doing that a real good job.
well, and with the Vo-Tech, it amazed me as I was, to have my kids out on the playground. I would watch those houses across the street go up. And the buses would pull in and the kids would get out. And they were working, and it was amazing watching those things. And I mean, I was here every day, twice a day, so I got to see it. It's amazing what they did, and they did everything.
And these kids light up.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, the
Yeah.
sense of production is huge. I think I think we can do more to get these kids involved in boat tech and the trades. I really do. There was one other point I wanted to make, but
I'm sure Mr. Heckman can talk too, because I've seen how, well,
Yeah.
you're involved with BCTC, but how, those kids they have jobs before they're done.
Well, it is, you're absolutely positively right. We have lost a little bit of the edge here in Oley Valley where we don't have any production type classes. I still have candle holders at home that we still use that our son made when he was in middle school or early high school. A lot of tin work, those sort of things. So, and a lot of pride. So we've lost that. But we did visit the home under construction. I already have arranged in May or June at the latest. We as a board will be invited to look at the house. But I think the other thing I can do is have a board meeting that we can schedule at the East Campus. So all of you can get to see what we have at the East Campus. West is a little bit of a different story with welding over there, but we have to promote it starting in elementary school. I know the Brandywine School District just had a presentation from our construction group in second grade at Brandywine, talking about contractors and measurements and those sort of things. These little kids are really excited about it. I'm asking, what are we doing in every district to bring those sort of things in elementary school, middle school, not wait till they're in their high school years and say, you want to go to Career and Technology Center. You have to start a whole lot earlier. You have to make the careers neat and attractive to students. So I think as a board, we can do that curriculum wise here. I don't know what can really change, but we have to start promoting more and more of that.
just getting the thought process out there and seeing what we can do. But I get a pretty good pulse on the community because I see hundreds of patients a week and man, we just need it. We need the trades so bad because our country's hurt in that regard. But I remember when I was in school, I remember saying, you'd see this comparison of kids that would go to college. You get the person that came out of school and he'd go into a trade and they'd make great money in the beginning. And then after a few years, they were making real low, but then eventually the college kids kind of overtook. I'm telling you, that landscape has completely changed. These kids are coming out of school with a couple $100,000 for the student loan debt and they're fighting for a job at Target. I see it. Unless listen, like I would love for my kids to go become a doctor in my office so I don't have to do the hard work anymore. But there are certain things that college is wonderful for with, engineering and becoming a doctor and lawyer and those sorts of things. But man, the trades, I think people can just do so well and have a wonderful lifestyle and do really well. So I just think we need to put our thinking caps on and how the landscape of our country has changed with these kids nowadays.
Yeah.
So
Dr. Shank, I can't remember the number, 191, the per counseling requirement that we're required to
Oh, yeah.
do. What's the number?
For the hours?
No, the
339.
with the guidance counselors of how they start at kindergarten.
Oh, the chapter
starting.
339.
339.
339. Because we start BCTC in elementary.
Yeah, we're required as a district to start in the elementary.
You would start in
and
kindergarten now.
And expose children to not only college, but also trade. And they've taken them out to different business.
Yeah, we do businesses, we do
manufacturing and different things.
BCTC. And
So they're starting at a very young
Yep.
age and exposing them not only to education, but also to the different businesses. and businesses.
And to your point, I think as a society, we got to break that paradigm that the only way to success is through college.
right.
I can't complain it did well for me, but you're right. I work with electricians and stuff all the time and they're dying for
things
people.
have just changed, or
Yeah.
definitely things are changing.
So it's a community effort as much. It sounds like from a school district, we do what we can. And I know the BCTC is really well thought of and pushed.
Right.
But again, the society's got to say, hey, kids, you know what? Electrician is a hell of a good job to have these days.
But also
Are
starts
they-
with the parents.
It starts, yeah. It's a
Yeah, it's up to
mind
parents.
shift.
Are there now? I don't remember that. It's been forever since I've been in school, but she knows, she's in my class. I believe at that time I don't recall if it was required to take a wood shop or a metal shop. I think there's such value in producing.
They don't,
Yeah,
the
it's
problem
not
is,
just visiting.
the problem is they don't make teachers, they don't have teachers anymore. The old industrial arts teachers, they aren't programs. Even Millersville doesn't. Millersville and Cal U were the two programs in the state. and they don't even have those programs anymore. They're all STEM-based science. So you can't even find industrial arts teachers that are trained to use those equipment.
We need to put our thinking caps on because things need to change.
Well,
I'm just,
and I'm gonna tell you that we were so happy when an application came in for that job. Because I'm one of those guys that I love to take something home to my family. And I tried to fight to keep those things back there. And luckily, we found a teacher who stayed. Because that teacher is so tough to get. It's just incredibly hard to find it. It's almost like what's become now with administrators, assistant principals, principals. They all decided, forget it. Let's just go, and teachers.
for any of you guys out there who have an opportunity to get your kid in a manufacturing lab, but go for it. It's been great for my son, Ben. And I'm gonna bring some of his pieces in on Wednesday.
I actually would suggest also besides that, teach them the business basics because then they can really capitalize on that. So how to run your mini business, what you need, the business plan, have maybe in a high school class, business of basic business basics. Yeah, thank you.
I can only speak to the
But-
Career Technology Center, but that's one of the things as chairman of that board that I'm really, really pushing. An entrepreneurial spirit has to be in every one of those students. It's not good to just be a carpenter. You have to be a business person.
Exactly.
So that's one of the
Exactly.
things, that's been one of my mantras right now with the group. What can we do to instill that in every program? I don't care, cosmetology, food service, whatever, they're all gonna be business people at some point in time. At least that's what we're grooming. So we're starting there, but right, it really has to go into many, many areas, but we're starting that now internally. with BCTC.
That's it then.
Mr. Trimber?
Yeah, real quick, get back to what Dr. Shank was saying, or all this board down to make. You guys are gonna start making changes by having this conversation. Two things real quick. Field trip to a place, nothing personal, Nancy, but a field trip to a place doesn't inspire kids to want to do it. I can remember learning, I'm in the trade industry, I learned how to do body work at 13 years old, I've been doing it ever since. But where I learned that I wanted to do that was in middle school. It hands on, it wasn't a field trip, it was, hey, you gotta take a wood shop, hey, you gotta take a metal shop, home ec class, whatever. That's where you build it, because by the time they get to high school age, it's too late, it's too hard for them to make that decision. But now they got that pressure off, I don't go to college, they gotta go to Penn. They haven't had a chance to get their hands dirty, physically get their hands dirty. The other one, I'll be a little bit of a wet blanket on the fire. I've dealt with a lot of people that come out of the trade industry schools, they're horrible. They really are. Everyone I've dealt with, ATC, Franklin and Marshall, you name it, they come there because unfortunately it's a big money-making bracket, and they don't teach these kids. A lot of kids, and I'm gonna beat the tech schools up a little bit too, because I went through tech. 4 years of tech, I learned more in 1 year in the shop than I did in 4 years of tech. Tech school teacher was spending too much time doing extracurricular crap that had nothing to do with the hands-on stuff. The guy was 50 years out of date of everything he was doing. It cost a lot of money. Buy a good tech school for a good trade. Good trade plan. So, and I'm not saying that to discourage it, but that's the reality of it. It costs you hundreds of thousands of dollars to outfit a real body shop without the equipment. So that's all it is. I hope you do it because we got guys, I got spots every day. I could even do my job today and have one before I got in my truck. I'm the average age for a body guy. That's sad.
Mrs. Berry?
Just to go off of what Mr. Kraken had said, there is a whole team called Redding's Dream Team through BCIU, I believe, that comes out and talks about nothing but engineering, manufacturing. They're the leaders in this industry locally. They're young professionals. My daughter was just asked to be on that team. They come out and they talk to these kids from the leading industry, the leading manufacturers in this county. I highly suggest you have these kids come to the school. They talk to them one-on-one. I believe it's on BCIU.
What's it called?
It's called Redding's Dream Team. And
Yeah.
I believe Jillian Darlington runs that.
And the kids like when the other peers that they can relate to come and share. They don't want to hear from us old guys, you know.
Speak for yourself.
Hey, you're 30 years out of school. Okay.
Anybody else? Any other
Yeah.
business? Yes, ma'am.
Fine, unfinished business, but it's gonna be on the other one.
Yeah.
Bullying. And now I am gonna make a statement. I hate bullying. I always hated. I fought it when I was in school. I was not popular with the popular kids because I stick my head out for the kids that were disadvantaged. And was kind of an oddball because, you know, I did not have much in common with those kids that were being bullied. But I would never, ever let them being bullied on my watch. And I've been bullied by those big guys. And my answer was, so what? I never cared that I was not going to be popular. I never cared that I was not going to be accepted. So I am against bullying. And I actually wanted to ask, so all the constituents could hear, what is our process for bullying? Because the biggest concern was being portrayed is that don't hear in timely from the kids and the time they don't want to be a snitch. So they don't want to speak up. The other kids kind of don't want to bring it up. I know that in middle school, which is where it's most prevalent, because of the whole age change and thing, so that the kids, they started enrolling in the VITAM program. So they're having the student counseling, but still, what is our process for reporting, like, you know, how is the bullying getting reported? I don't want any kid to fall between the, like through the cracks. I want to also empower all the kids in school. Speak up, please. If you see that something may be wrong, it probably is wrong.
Yes, I know we have over place for hate in that whole program, but.
No place for hate in
And
elementary.
they're elementary.
Yeah, basically, the bullying has to be reported to a teacher. If it's seen, it's addressed, it's disciplined. Bullying has to be persuasive and severe under the definition. It can be deemed harassment. We involve the police. It's discipline levels 1, 2, 3, and 4. Kids are suspended. They have detention. When it's seen, it's addressed. If the kids are not going to report it, there's a VITAM in the middle school. There's a VITAM at the high school. We are teaching kids to stand up for each other, but if they don't report it, or they don't want to tell us, or tell an adult, or tell a parent, it's really hard to address it. I mean, that's part of what the problem is. We'll hear more of that about the middle school and what Dr. Rohr has implemented down there with his teachers and from his students at his March presentation. This week's presentation is on his intervention and closing the gaps. And then March is about a VITAM and how he is dealing with that issue. And how he's taking a very hard stance on it. But it is very difficult to have students come forward because one student may not think it's bullying and they think it's being funny or sarcastic, where another student, they've crossed the line. So, and a lot of it is social media and it's occurring outside of school, but case law does not allow us to address that. So we do turn it over to the police and do involve the police when it occurs. We do take a hard stance on it when it is reported to us, but we need to know when it happens, not 2 months later. And that's part of the problem that we have with it, is reported well after the fact. And with any child, because it's not reported timely, it's very difficult to deal with it. But he does take a very hard stance when it does occur.
And as a parent whose child was bullied, you got to, if you see the change in behavior, you got to reach out to your child and talk to them. They will not speak up. They just kind of bottle it in, try to deal with those emotions on their own. But just pay attention. There's very subtle cues that something is not quite right. Maybe it's a little bit more emotional, something else going on, and you can't quite put your finger on. So spend extra time one-on-one so you can reach out and figure it out and say, it's like, what's really, try to get to the bottom of it. Because unfortunately, it can escalate to the physical harm to themselves. And again, it's very hard to see in the school setting, you know, because kids are very good hiding it. So talk to your children and also encourage them. If they see that something is going on, maybe they may not perceive it this way, but if something inside them tells them that it's wrong, just maybe even could talk to you and you can pass it on. So I want to be like proactive as possible as a parent, as a board member, and I want to kind of bring it up to everybody. It's everybody's responsibility.
Thank you, Mrs. Yes, ma'am.
I wasn't sure if it was earlier. I think it was a request. Maybe since we did this. So I think I would just like to encourage the board, we gotta take a look at the systemic issue. That is work environment that affects everybody with diversity. Have we made this environment? What does it look like on the student level, on the level, and on the board level? Words matter, how we describe things matter, and I think we look at various levels of our community is going to help in creating a safe environment where somebody is bullied for one, that's not something that is allowed, but also we have an environment that is helpful to that fear of judgment. We develop hard, and we all feel somehow different and other, and somehow it's wrong with us, and that's our last helping people kind of overcome that by failure as well. Or take a look at ways to do that, and there are those ways.
Thank you.
I just have one other thing. Don't forget tomorrow, the governor will present his budget. I know everyone can't wait to watch.
Good PSA.
You mind a beer?
Thanks for sharing.
Anybody else? Anything else? All right, folks, see you Wednesday night.